A very good afternoon, everyone. Hi, this is Kathy Rana, and I welcome you all to yet another episode of Expert Speak, a series of LinkedIn Live interviews where we try and get the perspective of industry experts who derive the market. The aviation industry in India, like in the rest of the world, was under a major turmoil because of the pandemic. With passenger traffic near zero, the industry shifted its focus towards air cargo, which helped the industry stay afloat. However, running the air cargo operations seamlessly was also a bit of a challenge and required the airlines as well as the airports to innovate and make the necessary inventions. Bangalore International Airport, which aims to become the cargo hub of India, has come through during this trying time and with its constant efforts and interventions to enlighten us about the innovations and the investments done by Bangalore Airport. Also, the preparedness of the airport for the second wave of the pandemic. Today, joining us is Mr. Satyaki Raghunath. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Kavi.
Mr. Satyaki is the Chief Strategy and Development Officer at Bangalore Airport. He has an extensive experience in transportation and airport system planning across major cities viz. London, Chicago, Dubai, Houston, New Delhi, etc. In his role at Bangalore Airport, Mr. Satyaki is responsible for strategy and development business unit, focusing on front-end corporate strategy and business development, slot coordination and traffic forecasting, the aviation business comprising airline marketing, cargo, ground handling, and other aviation concessionaries. The Bangalore Airport's Center of Excellence comprising capacity and master planning, project coordination, and the program management office. Also, Bangalore Airport's Innovation Lab responsible for digital transformation at the airport. Mr. Raghunath, we're pleased to have you here with us, and I look forward to a very enlightening and insightful interview and discussion with you. So, before we begin the interview, I would like to inform our audiences to please feel free to drop any questions in the comment section as Mr. Raghunath will be answering your questions towards the end of the interview. So, shall we begin, sir?
Please.
So, sir, my first question is in regards to the innovation that the Bangalore Airport has done. Earlier in March, the airport launched India's first dedicated express cargo terminal. So, how will this terminal facilitate the ease of doing business, reduce the transaction time, and at the same time add impetus to the state's booming e-commerce business?
So thanks, Kavi, and Logistics Insider for sort of giving us this opportunity to be part of this discussion. I think we're in a very fortunate position in terms of location and where we are sort of situated with respect to the southern half of the Indian peninsula. We are exceptionally fortunate to be located sort of between the two coasts in the middle of the peninsula, with access to 4 or 5 of the premier South Indian states in terms of having market reach. The additional advantage is also the fact that Bangalore has always been sort of a center for technology and e-commerce, as you all know, and is also known as the Silicon Valley of India. So we sort of benefit from certain natural advantages in terms of both location and the fact that Bangalore has developed as a city, as the center of e-commerce and is known as the Silicon Valley of India. Having said that, I think we looked at it as an opportunity to try and see what we could do to provide a dedicated express and courier terminal here at the airport. We've just commissioned, as you said, in March, a 200,000 square foot or a 20,000 square meter facility, which is built to suit and will house sort of leading global courier organizations like DHL Express, FedEx, EICI, etc. And what we're trying to do there is we thought about the fact that we needed a built-to-suit facility to enable the ease of doing business and significantly reduce transaction time and cost to the shipper by providing a dedicated facility for such shipments. Now, Before we commissioned this facility, we had about 570,000 metric tons of cargo capacity here at the airport. The new facility will add a dedicated sort of space of about 150,000 metric tons annually, and that will take us to well over 700,000 metric tons in terms of overall capacity at Bangalore Airport. The idea is that over the course of the next few years, we think that the B2C and B2B markets have huge potential, and the dedicated facility will go a long way in terms of providing multiple service providers very good transaction times, transit times, and various value-added service here within the terminal facility itself. Uh, I think in addition, we are also focusing on various technology efforts to make the shipping process itself, visibility, information to our supply chain, etc., far more transparent. And in combination with the new facility, I think those two efforts will go a long way in making sure that we can reinforce our position here as sort of the e-commerce capital of India.
So while answering your question, you mentioned upon the new innovation done by Bangalore Airport provides. So if you could also highlight how visibility in your supply chain has become important in today's time.
Yeah, I mean, I think more and more, as you probably realize, customers want to know exactly where their goods are. Our supply chain partners want to have better visibility across the entire sort of export or import process, or even if it's domestic cargo, inbound and outbound processes. So, with that in mind, we've teamed up with Kale Logistics, for instance, to offer a dedicated ACS, which is an air cargo community platform, which is in the process of being rolled out right now, and it will go live at both our CTOs, both at AI SATs initially, and then at Menzies Aviation Boba, which is the second terminal. And the idea is to provide complete visibility to all of our customers and supply chain partners in terms of their shipments from end to end as it goes through our facilities. And the entire backend software and the systems within the two terminals are being integrated. And the idea is to try and get as much visibility in real time as possible, and then integrated that into our wider data analytics platform, so that we can also make sure that we are doing what we can from our perspective, along with all of our partners and stakeholders, to ensure that customers are sort of getting maximum access and visibility at any given time. So essentially, it's information at your fingertips.
So, sir, now that you've mentioned the collaboration that the Bangalore Airport has done with Kale Logistics, I would like to ask my next question on that. You know, during the pandemic, everyone in the logistics industry adapted to the concept of collaborating with one another with open arms. And now, can you please mention any other collaborations that the airport has done in order to fight the pandemic and keep the supply chain moving?
Sure. I mean, I think the whole of the last year has been a giant collaboration project, as you sort of can possibly imagine. Exactly a year ago, we were in the midst of a lockdown. The lockdown lasted about 60 days. The first, I would say, 10, 15 days were a nightmare for everybody. We were all sort of scrambling and trying to make sense of the what was going on. It wasn't easy at all. And I think it would be very remiss of me not to mention the fact that we worked exceptionally closely with both the Ministry of Civil Aviation and the Government of Karnataka from a government perspective on various sort of issues related both with logistical challenges, regulatory issues, processes and protocol, especially in the midst of a sort of a pandemic environment, making sure that we understood exactly what was allowed, what was possible, what was a challenge, the kind of permissions we needed, the kind of approvals we needed. Then working with all of our partners to ensure that staff could come regularly to the airport and continue to keep supply chains flowing. And I think while a lot of the humanitarian issues have been highly documented, it's also important to acknowledge the fact that the government, both at a national level and at a state level, did a huge amount of coordination to make sure that essential supplies, food, pharmaceutical supplies, various other commodities, essential commodities, continue to flow through the markets. And I think that couldn't have been done without the support of both the state and the central government. In addition, I think the entire cargo community, again, I can't thank them enough. I think everybody came together in terms of the agents, in terms of the freight forwarders, in terms of the airlines, the cargo terminal operators, the industry bodies, and certainly in the ministry, Ms. Vandana Agarwal and sort of her team, for instance, and made sure that everything flowed as smoothly as possible. And I think there were certain key areas that we really focused on. One was on perishables, because that was absolutely essential in terms of maintaining supply chains and temperature control sort of supply chains in particular. Second area of focus was pharmaceutical supplies, making sure essential items, emergency supplies, vaccines, medical supplies, etc., got through even then for various purposes, and also coordination with BTPC on sort of cargo terminals and airlines for the smooth movement of all of the sort of critical medical equipment through the pandemic. In addition, I think the other part that doesn't get discussed very often, but is very, very critical, is the fact that both from a security perspective with our partners here in terms of BCAS and CISF, and the Customs Commissionerate here at Bangalore, right, have been absolutely outstanding in terms of the support that they've given us. And if at all, we could all sort of say that we've been fortunate that we've not been as badly affected as some people have been during the pandemic. I think a lot of credit goes to our partners as well within the government and all of our sort of government agencies who've really worked hard with us. And every time it was very constructive. And I think, that's been a hugely reassuring thing through the whole 12, 14 months that have gone by, in terms of saying, how can we focus on solutions? And how can we ensure that we keep those supply chains open? And how can we make sure that all of our partners are fundamentally doing what they need to make sure that the average citizen isn't impacted? Now, in addition, I think from a trade partner perspective, we were supporting manpower movement of many of these trade partners through those initial sort of period of the first 60 days in terms of the lockdown, and as the government progressively lifted various restrictions in terms of working with the police, working with sort of the district authorities, working with the airlines, agents, the CHAs, etc. And probably with about 80 partners and about 250 personnel here at the airport in terms of getting passes, permits, and all of those sort of required documentation going in order to make sure that we could do business as usual. We also coordinated a series of meetings between the top perishable traders, the Air India teams, and various initiatives relating sort of the movement of perishable goods. And we also did a lot of coordination with our LogiConnect partners, and I can come to that later, but in terms of making sure that cargo from our catchment regions could come here to Bangalore Airport without too many sort of hitches on the way. So, I think the last 12 months, if anything, right, has taught us that we can collaborate, and we can collaborate very effectively. And I think if you ask any airport or airline here in India, or possibly even across the world, they'll tell you that one of the great things about the last 12 months, there are very many stories of despair and sort of negativity and things like that. But with respect to being positive, right, I think one of the great lessons that we've sort of learned along the way, and one of the shining sort of bright spots, has been the fact that every person within the stakeholder community, I think, rose to the occasion and did what was required in order to help the facilitation of goods and sort of essential supplies. And I think we couldn't have done it without sort of a significant amount of involvement from all of our partners.
So, sir,
Harvey, I can't hear you.
partnership.
Sorry, I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
So,
audible now.
yeah, my next question is in regards to another partnership done by the airport in February this year. While Airport entered a strategic partnership with Environmentainer to facilitate a seamless temperature-controlled supply chain, which made it the fourth airport in the country and the second in South India to partner with the with Environmentainer. Can you please highlight the benefits that the airport has been yielding from the partnership, and also what other steps have been taken by the airport to make the cold chain more seamless?
I think even before Environmentainer came in, we had a cold chain facilities here, both in our cargo terminals, and we have a dedicated cool port facility here at the airport. And many of these sort of temperature controlled shipments, perishables, pharma supplies, meat, poultry, etc., etc., which get exported, horticultural products, things like that, were going through our facilities. But I think what we've done now is that we've tied up with Envirotainer, as you said correctly. We are the fourth, one of the 4 airports in India to have tied up with them. And the idea is to provide advanced end-to-end sort of temperature control solutions. And this one allows the movement of pharma products all over the world without any sort of major variation in temperature, which, as you know, is very, very critical with respect to the efficacy of any sort of pharmaceutical product. I mean, I'm not even talking about vaccines and things like that, but just generally pharmaceutical products in general. And I think the idea is that what could we do to help facilitate the greater, both in terms of reliability and in terms of volumes of temperature controlled products through Bangalore Airport? Because I think, again, Bangalore is a very, very major hub as far as sort of, pharmaceuticals and chemicals are concerned here in India. And the idea is, how do you make sure that you provide the right resources and the facilities to all of our partners to be able to take advantage of the fact that they're located in Bangalore, and work with the government to sort of, make sure we can move goods both in and out of the airport. So AI Sats will manage the storing services here for Envirotainer as part of this relationship. And this is something that we sort of conceptualized and worked with our teams, and allows sort of pharmaceutical companies as well as their logistics partners to move these temperature sensitive cargo shipments across the world. And in doing so, they also are able to maintain the integrity and quality, as I said, and reliability of that product through the entire journey. So today, pharmaceutical products account for almost 13% of international cargo from Bangalore Airport every year, and it goes all over the world. And the idea is to try and see what we can do to significantly enhance that number, because I think one of the things about air cargo is the fact that it allows you that speed and just-in-time service. And I think that's particularly critical in the space of medicines, pharmaceutical drugs, and things like that. So that was sort of the logic and reasoning behind sort of partnering with Envirotainer.
Now that we have been, discussing about the cold chain logistics, it is hardly difficult not to mention the COVID vaccine logistics. And prior this interview, I just asked you, what is the status on the logistics of the COVID vaccine at the airport? So it'd be great if you tell our audiences this as well.
So I think that's an interesting question. I think a lot of the COVID vaccine shipments, as you know, in India, a lot of it depends on where they're being produced. And the biggest, I think, my understanding is that the 4 major centers for production of COVID vaccines in India are Pune, where the Serum Institute provides and produces some of the world's largest vaccine sort of production facilities in Pune. Hyderabad, I understand, in and around Ahmedabad, and finally, there's a production facility north of Delhi. So if you look at it, the 4 production facilities are not necessarily located close to Bangalore Airport. So while we've not been involved in too much export and sort of international shipment of COVID vaccines, we've been working with sort of our partners, the state government, central government, and various other sort of industry partners, in order to make sure that the domestic movement of vaccine is as seamless as possible. So whatever comes through here is being facilitated here through the sort of cargo terminals that we have, the temperature control facilities that I spoke about, and moving through the airport. There's been some movement of domestic shipment of COVID vaccines, but a lot of that today also gets done by road. And I think over the course of the next few months and years, as that production sequence stabilizes, and as more and more sort of vaccines get developed, I'm pretty sure that we will be exporting or even moving domestically a significantly larger amount of COVID vaccines over the course of the next few months and years. But that said, I think that's one of the reasons why we chose very specifically to invest in some of the things that we have, to make sure that when the time comes and when these opportunities arise, in terms of making sure that we have to move pharmaceuticals or vaccines or sensitive goods in the fastest way possible, in the most reliable and sort of temperature control way possible, we are ready. So I think a lot of our efforts have been focused towards ensuring that we don't sort of scramble at the last minute, and we are prepared for when it happens.
So, sir, we also understand that the airport is aiming to become the cargo hub of India, and in line with the same.
I couldn't understand that.
We understand that the airport is aiming to become the cargo hub of India. So, in line with that, Bangalore Airport has opened India's first on-airport public bonded warehouse in September last year. So, can you please throw some light on that facility and how has it helped make the supply chain more efficient? Also, what more innovations are on the books for the airport?
So that's a okay. That's a good question. I mean, I think from our perspective, we, like I said early on, I think we are perfectly positioned. Firstly, in terms of making sure that we are located in the. I mean, I think that's we have the benefit of location. We had nothing to do with that. I think we were lucky. Once that we sort of put that out of the. I mean, once we sort of let's say accept that, I think from our perspective, we've done three things this year. One is I think we've redoubled our efforts with respect to how we work with our partners, stakeholders, the airlines, the wider cargo community, including the cargo agents, and all of the government agencies, including customs and PCAS and CISF, and both the central and the state governments, in terms of making sure we need to have much better and coordinated efforts. With respect to facilities, we did three things this year. The first part was we sort of invested in our airside facilities, which included the aprons and the cargo parking positions and things like that. So that was very specific, dedicated freighter positions that we expanded on in terms of increasing capacity. Because we realized early on, I would say probably around April of last year, that there was going to be a significant push, at least during these 12 months from a cargo perspective. And while 60% of the cargo was carried earlier in the belly capacity of passenger aircraft, today that number is the other way around. We're probably seeing 70% of cargo being carried on dedicated freighters and only 30% being carried, for instance, on in the belly of passenger aircraft. So that equation changed for us, and we did two things. One is invested and went ahead with the accelerated opening of our Express Courier Terminal that I spoke about earlier. The second facility that we did was the bonded warehouse, which is a 10,000 square foot facility that we opened here on campus. And what it does is it's the first on-airport public bonded warehouse. And what it does is it will meet the demands of customers who are focusing on the re-export and long-term storage of bonded cargo at a very, very sort of minimal logistics cost. And that's located here on the west side of our airport. And it will be under the jurisdiction of the City Commissionerate of the Bangalore Customs. And it's being operated by CSC, which is the Cargo Service Center, as you know. And it will reduce supply chain costs and facilitate trade here at the airport, and also within the surrounding regions. And from our perspective, it was very important to focus on this also because of the presence of sort of IT and BD companies here in the Bengaluru metropolitan region, and the various retail brands and the multinational companies who sort of call the city their home. And we handle a large volume of imports. And for us, that was very, very significant. And we had to make sure that we had the bonded warehouse because it will play a significant role in sort of allowing for improved trade and connecting markets around the world. We think that in the longer term, we will be the most preferred and busiest sort of cargo terminal for manufacturers as well here in South India. And the warehouse was sort of a nod to make sure that we had the right capacity in the right place in order to take advantage of that. The third facility that we've recently sort of in the process of opening is a trucking facility for making sure that all of our landside trucks can actually be located in a dedicated zone where they can have rest facilities, a restaurant, sleeping facilities, etc., where they will be sort of housed, and when they can go to the different cargo terminals at different times when they're called in, rather than sort of clogging the roads and making sure that we had a capacity logjam on the land side. So we focused on three areas, like I said. So we focused on the air side, the terminals, and the land side. And the last piece of investment that we're doing in order to make sure that we can push all of this is the investment in the technology, which is the ACS platform, and giving customers better visibility. So I think from our perspective, we are trying to do everything we can to ensure that all parts of the sort of the areas that we have some control over, we make sure that our partners and suppliers and stakeholders get as much visibility as possible and get the best infrastructure that they need. It's our job to make their lives easier. So at the end of the day, from that perspective, I mean, we think that if we wanted to achieve our objective of being India's preferred cargo hub, which I certainly think is possible, we need to make sure that we can provide superior customer service, much better product, and demonstrate the fact that we have our stakeholders and customers at heart, and ensure that we can do what it takes for them to sort of do what they need to do in order for both of us to be successful.
Sir, you mentioned about the innovations done in the trucking sector as well by the airport. So I would like to ask that Logi Connect by the airport is a dedicated road feeder service that helps strengthens the airport's connectivity. So can you enlighten our audience with its function and how has this innovation benefited the air cargo industry?
Sure. I mean, this is something that we're particularly sort of pleased about. This is a plan that we came up with in 2017-18. And what we did was we launched this program in collaboration with our cargo partners, AI SATS and MABB. And it was done as a dedicated road feeder service from key catchment areas where we thought there was significant potential to attract manufacturing goods from to go through Bangalore Airport. And what we did was that we called it under the brand, we sort of defined a brand name called Logi Connect by BLR. And what it does is it connects the southern cities of Tirupur, Coimbatore, Ambur, Salem, Erode, Hyderabad, and Chennai with BLR Airport. And essentially, it gives exporters the assurance that their cargo will be transported via road in bonded trucks to BLR Airport in a very efficient and cost-effective manner. And it's very clear. It was done also to maintain the lowest possible transshipment time for those consignments. And the fact that they could come here to the airport just in time, it can be cleared by the customs, at their point of origin. For instance, at the Coimbatore Inland Container Terminal, we get clearance done, and they're transported in a sealed truck here to Bangalore Airport, for instance. And then, excuse me, they're flown to various destinations without requiring a second customs clearance here. And what it does is it allows people to be able to, bring it to the terminal there, when they need to. It allows the clearance there. It really gives them a lot of from perspective of peace of mind and not having to do last minute things here at the airport in terms of customs clearance and things like that. And I think they've flown to various destinations here in collaboration and consultation with all of our partners. The customs has been great, again, in terms of helping us facilitate new initiatives like that. And I think the idea is over the course of time, we will increase our overall cargo tonnage only if we take sort of initiatives like that. And I'd like to reiterate the point that I made earlier, which is that we've really made a very dedicated and sort of very serious effort to engage with our customers, and not just in Bangalore, but I think the team has done an incredible job sort of going out into the hinterland and making sure that we are talking to potential customers, not just within sort of say 50, 60 kilometers of the airport, but we're talking about up to 500 kilometers of the airport. So that helps. And I think once your customers know that you're a facility where they can get their goods through in the shortest possible time with the least effort and in the most streamlined and easiest and technologically friendly way possible, I think they find that there's value in it for them. And like I said earlier, so long as you can demonstrate clear value to your customers and partners, I think there's always a great chance that you'll succeed. So for us, the benefits of Logi Connect were pretty clear, right? We had ease of doing business, a daily scheduled service from these catchment areas. There was no need to wait for a full truckload. We could avoid multiple sort of handling points and therefore reduce the possibility of damage to cargo. We also had these trucks that were GPS enabled, so we could track them throughout. And you had customs clearance at the origin, which sort of really made life very easy for all of the people who were manufacturing and shipping. So that was sort of the fundamental premise of Logi Connect. And I'm very pleased to say that it's really worked well. And we've refined the product over the course of the last few years, and it's something that contributes in a huge way to what we're trying to do here.
Sir, can you also highlight any new innovations that you've brought in Logi Connect in particular during this pandemic? Some hurdles that you might have faced and you had to reinvent or re-innovate in some or the other way in particularly Logi Connect.
I don't think we did anything specific as far as the Logi Connect product was concerned during the pandemic, except for the fact, like I said earlier, working with all of the government authorities, the cargo stakeholder community, to ensure that we could allow the seamless movement of goods between states, and working with them to get them the passes and the permits and things like that to allow for that movement from their point of origin here to the airport and vice versa. And I think from our perspective, uh, again, like I said, I think the government did a great deal. I mean, they really worked closely with us. They wanted to ensure that supply chains were not broken. They also wanted to make sure that perishables, in particular, for instance, could get to the airport and through the airport as quickly as possible. So I don't think we did too much differently. I just think there was an enhanced degree of collaboration and sort of stakeholder involvement. And like I said, crisis, for instance, teaches you many things. And I think this was an opportunity for us to actually work very closely with all of our partners. And that's something that everybody came together and did. And I don't think we could have done it on our own. And everybody really wanted to make sure that people and stakeholders are impacted as little as possible. And I'm sure that if you talk to other airports or other sort of places within India, they will tell you the same stories in terms of how everybody came together and did what was required in order to keep the supply chains moving.
So, sir, this brings me to my last question. India at present, as we all know, is experiencing a second wave of the pandemic. So, what impact do you think it will have on the air cargo industry? And also, what is the preparedness of the airport in regards to the same?
So I think that, Garvi, that's a good question. I don't know offhand, and I'll tell you why. Because I think we thought we had got over the worst of it in January, and we were starting to see a significant resurgence in terms of traffic volume. I'm talking about passenger traffic in through December and then January and even early February. In fact, we had our busiest day in early February, where we were up to about 70+% of our pre-COVID traffic levels, daily traffic levels. And then, of course, the second wave has sort of hit us with a ferocity that we probably didn't even see in the first wave. And what's happened is that traffic levels have dropped again. And if you remember, the DGCA sort of progressively from May to about December increased the slot capacity of the domestic airlines from starting with 30% when they restarted operations in May to about 80% in December. And the airlines had all actually come back to some degree of stabilization. You would sort of see people at about, I would say we were in our 68 to 70% load factors on the planes, and again that meant that belly cargo was being carried, especially from a domestic perspective. I think what the second wave has done is it's sort of applied the brakes to some of that. We've lost again about 20 to 25% of daily traffic because of sort of the second wave, both in terms of people being far more cautious about flying and all of the testing requirements, the showing of additional documentation, etc., making flying more difficult than it needs to be. So I think the next 2 or 3 months are going to be pretty difficult. But that said, from a cargo perspective, last year was worse. I mean, at least today we roughly know what we did, what we do well, what we need to do, etc., etc., and there's a system in place. I think from September onwards, we've been very fortunate, and I think the team has done an incredible job, both those things together, in terms of making sure that our month-on-month cargo volumes have been better than the previous year. So even though we didn't have 2 months of any traffic and the pickup was very slow, I would say between May and August, I think from September we've actually surpassed the previous year's levels, and we ended the year also at a pretty decent tonnage in terms of the fiscal year. So I think looking forward, one of the big things I see continuing is the fact that there will continue to be significant freighter capacity here through India and certainly in Bangalore. In addition, I think you will continue to see those P2C conversions that we saw last year in terms of the passenger to cargo freight conversions, with various airlines actually filling their passenger aircraft with cargo and bringing them in or taking them out. And I think from a supply chain perspective, I don't think you will see too much of an impact here. Because I think most supply chains today are quite resilient, and they've had the benefit of 12 months to get used to COVID and try and make sure that goods get from point A to point B quite well. But I think in the longer term or even medium term, if we expect the recovery to continue, I think we have to figure out a way of easing restrictions on international operations, because so much of cargo, especially on the international front, is still carried in the belly of passenger aircraft. So unless you get back to some degree of re-establishing airline networks and allowing for airlines to actually do what they did earlier, you're always going to find that there will be a lag, and it's difficult to play catch up. But I think from our perspective, we are continuing to maintain very strict COVID safety protocols across all of our cargo operations, and we are trying to digitize as much as possible in order to allow for much more contactless ways of working. And I think all of our cargo stakeholders through the Air Cargo Community Portal will come under one sort of umbrella, and we will eliminate paperwork and sort of process to the extent possible, and allowing them to do so from a digital perspective, make sure that their transactions are faster. It allows them to not have to think about verifying a physical documents and things like that. And again, combined with all of our other efforts, I'm hoping that this year we will be able to build on some of the successes that we've had in quite challenging times, and move forward and with sort of renewed purpose and sort of vigor.
So, sir, do you think and see like the lessons that have been already learned will be of use in this second wave for the airports and the airlines?
I think so. I mean, I think 12 months earlier, if you ask most of the airlines, COVID was new to all of us, right? I mean, we were all sort of grappling with something which we didn't fully understand, I suppose, at that point. I think today in any industry, certainly as far as supply chains are concerned, as far as cargo is concerned, as far as sort of movement of goods is concerned, we have a much better understanding of sort of what we need to do, what the challenges are, what the opportunities are, and I think there's a certain process that works, and that's been refined over the course of the last year through this sort of very difficult COVID phase. And I think from that perspective, we've really got better at understanding what we do, and we've gotten better at working with our partners and stakeholders to having a process that works. And so I think from those metrics, I think this year will be a lot better. I think the challenge is going to be sort of having enough resilience and being able to grit our teeth for another, I would say, 6 to 12 months to make sure that everybody is vaccinated, traffic levels start coming back to some degree of normalcy, and allowing the resumption of international operations. And I think from a long-term cargo perspective, I think that's going to be the key in terms of making sure that we can work with all of our community. We can sort of work with the airlines also and with the government to make sure that the international operations are opened up at the earliest to allow for sort of significantly greater volumes of cargo to be sort of carried both to and from India. And I think that's going to be the key.
So, sir, this brings me to the end of my questions, and now I'll be picking up a few questions from our audiences. So, sir, my
Sure.
first question from the audience is by Mr. Ajay Saraswat. He asked, "Are there any plans to rationalize rates or commercials to facilitate the exempt rate?"
Uh, I mean, offhand, no. I mean, we don't have sort of control over the specific rates. I think today that's driven by supply and demand, and I don't think we don't get involved in the rates that the service providers set, honestly, except for certain things like some of our parking facilities and things like that. So from that perspective, I don't have a view on that, and I think that's a question that you will probably need to drive towards the government stakeholders or the cargo terminal operators. From our perspective, there's no specific plan to rationalize rates or commercials to facilitate the exempt trade. But I think what we're trying to do is lower the overall cost of doing business and trying to provide better technology, greater visibility, and better infrastructure here as an airport to make sure that our partners, the cargo industry themselves, airlines, and sort of the wider stakeholder community is sort of encouraged to push more volume through the airport here. So from that perspective, I think in any case, it's a competitive market. We believe that we are very competitive from a rates perspective, and I think that you will see that in the fact that if we weren't, we wouldn't be doing the volumes we did. And I think we provide great customer service at very, very competitive and reasonable rates. So I think I don't have a specific answer on the rationalization of rates beyond that.
So, sir, now my next question is from Sandeep Rao. He asks, what are the new, with all the new additions to cargo infrastructure, will it attract new airlines into Bangalore for cargo?
Yeah, I should have expected that question from Sandeep. Yeah, that's the plan, and we are talking to various people. So Sandeep, stay tuned. Hopefully, we can give you some good news in the next month or two. But the short answer is yes.
Okay. Moving on to the next question, sir. It is from Mr. Tariq Ahmed. He asks, do you think it's time for India to realize the true potential of bonded trucking and bonded warehouses for air cargo operations?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think like everything else, we often wake up late. I think, but it's easy to say that. I mean, I think the challenge is in order for bonded trucking to work and in order for trucking to work itself as a great feeder to cargo, I think you need great road infrastructure. And I think if you look at what's happened in India over the course of the last 5 to 10 years, the road infrastructure has become so fantastic that it's made bonded trucking and various forms of trucking itself, right, far more economically viable, both in terms of speed of delivery as well as in terms of reliability and efficiency. And today, with the digital stack being what it is in India and allowing even for things like FASTag, for instance, right, it's made everybody's life much easier. So I think if you look at it, I think in many ways we are actually ahead of the curve compared to a lot of other countries as far as road infrastructure is concerned. I know we constantly compare ourselves to OECD countries, and that's probably not the best comparison to make at all times. But I think if you look at what, given the size and the diversity of India, and given sort of the sheer distances we have to cover across different states with all of the GST rules and things like that, and even that has become much better now. I think we've done a great job. Our highway network is getting better with every day, and I think bonded trucking will continue to be very, very interesting, and possibly over the medium to longer term, it will probably be two things. One is, I think from a time sensitive perspective, it will really drive air cargo capacity and demand at the airports. But equally, it would probably be a good, from a domestic perspective, you'll probably compete with air cargo even, because if the quality of the roads and the reliability of the infrastructure is that good, there's nothing to stop bonded sort of trucks from, or truck movement of cargo by trucks, even from a domestic perspective, to actually be quite competitive even in the domestic landscape. So I think yes, I think the time has come. I think you will see more and more of it at all of the major airports, and I think you will also see that in many ways from the hinterland, bonded trucking is probably a better way to get cargo to the airports than necessarily any other mode. So I'm certainly very optimistic about it.
Uh, now I'll be picking up one last question from the audience. It is from Mr. Ramesh Venkat. He asks, what's the status on the community center of all logistics service providers coming at the airport?
I'm not entirely sure I understand that question. I'll tell you why. I don't know whether there's a community center. I think if Mr. Venkat means we have a trucking facility that we've recently sort of in the process of opening, and that's got a major area for the cargo community in terms of the drivers and the trucking community in terms of rest facilities, toilets, sleeping areas, restaurants, etc. I think that's going to be a very interesting area, and I think it's better than anything you'll see anywhere else in India. We've taken members of the cargo community here at Bangalore and shown them the facilities, for instance. I think we constantly try to do things that we think will make life easier for the wider cargo community here. So that's something that we are opening up, but I don't know of any other community center for logistics service providers here at the airport, unless I'm missing something totally.
Thank you for answering all the questions, sir. So now this brings us towards the end of this insightful interview, and it indeed was very enlightening for me. I have totally, I guess everyone has understood how important collaboration and innovation is in order to get out from the turmoil of the pandemic. And the collaboration and innovation done by Bangalore Airport and its success during the pandemic has kept forward an example for the rest to follow. And I'm sure in regards to the second wave of the pandemic, the airlines and the airports have learned their lessons. They have become resilient, and we are hopeful that everyone will be able to beat the second wave in a much quicker way, and we all will come out victorious. That is what we are hopeful of. I would like to thank all our audiences for joining us today, and I hope this was a very insightful discussion for you all. And thank you so much, sir, for connecting with us today. It was very insightful for me in particular, and thank you so much, sir. It was great having you
Uh,
here with us.
Thank you, Karvi. But there's one more question, and I think let me just end with that. It talks about the
Okay.
future cargo development here at the airport. And I think,
Okay.
from our perspective, we did about 380 odd thousand metric tons the year before. This year, we will end, I mean, we'll have to look at the final numbers. We'll be in the range of about 325,000 metric for the fiscal
Mm-hmm.
year. And I think that's quite an incredible recovery considering where we were and the fact that we didn't have 2 months of major operation, even though things were moving. But if you think about it, I think in the longer term, we've sort of thought about where we want to be in say 10 years time, and our goal, and I'm saying this very openly, is that we think that we should logically be in the range of between 1.2 and 1.5 million metric tons in about 10 years time, and that's from an annual tonnage perspective. And if we have to get there, I don't think we can get there by constantly just thinking of just physical infrastructure. We've got to do all of the things that we're doing today and possibly a lot more. So in terms of cargo development, uh, like I said early on, we've just commissioned the ECT. We've taken our overall annual capacity up to about 725,000 metric tons with that commissioning. I think over the course of the next few years, we will increase our capacity and handling capacity to about 1 million metric tons per year over the course of the next 3 or 4 years. And then in the longer term, the idea is to make sure that we are comfortably able to handle anywhere in the region of 1.5 million metric tons. And I think that will happen. I think with respect to all of the work we've done through our master plan development here at the airport, we've opened our second runway about 14, 15 months ago. As you know, we're the only airport, or the second airport in India and the only airport in South India to now have two independent parallel runways. Uh, we've made sure that we've got reserved enough capacity to take us up to about 90 million passengers annually. And if we do that, and if you take the, both from a cargo infrastructure perspective, airfield, terminal, and landside infrastructure perspective, we think that we should be quite comfortable up to the early 2030s, where we can handle 90 million passengers and about 1.5 million metric tons of cargo across the BIAL campus. And I think that's very key for us. And I think that will position us also very squarely in the middle of sort of the larger airports of the world. And from our perspective, our vision is to ensure that we sort of, serve as the gateway, the natural gateway to India, both from a passenger and a cargo perspective. And so we are hugely excited. We think we are well positioned. We think we are doing the right things. But as always, I don't think we could have done it without the sort of active participation of all of our stakeholders and wider cargo and passenger community. So it would be very sort of poor of me in conclusion at the end of all of this to not thank all of you who are part of the wider sort of cargo and logistics community, as well as sort of the passenger community who uses Bangalore Airport all the time. Thank you very much. We really appreciate all of the support and feedback that we get. And I think, India is on the cusp of sort of doing great things. And it's up to all of us to make sure that we can take advantage of sort of even crises in terms of turning them into opportunities and making sure that we can really do great things. So we have a very, very supportive management here, and investors who really put uh, the wider city of Bangalore, the stakeholders, the government, etc., at the forefront of everything that we do. Uh, it's been working exceptionally well. Long may it last. And again, thank you to all of our sort of government partners, the customs, BCAS and CISF, and GOK and the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Again, Mrs. Vanna Agarwal, for instance, at MOCA, the Customs Commissionerate here in Bangalore, our CISF colleagues, they've all been outstanding. And I'm not talking just about the pandemic. I'm talking about in general in helping us get to where we want to get, and really focusing on solutions here with us rather than sort of trying to tell us what can't be done. It's a great sort of working environment, and that's really done a lot to help us get to where we've got. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Bangalore Airport has indeed come through during this pandemic, and we're hoping that with more constant efforts and innovations that the Bangalore Airport is already on the path of, you'll surely meet your aim of becoming the preferred cargo hub of India. So, thank you so much for joining us today, sir, and thank you so much to all our audiences who have joined us today in this insightful interaction. Thank you. Great having you here, sir.
Thank you, Karvi. Thank you so much.